Let's everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Statement of values. Oh, statement of values. As we gather this evening, we humbly seek blessings upon this. To excuse?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, hearing procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearing. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on the agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentations of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any item as prescribed by the chair. The appeal of the commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Okay, do we have any continuances or exceptions? Okay, consent calendar.
I would like to pull the minutes of April 25th and May 10th.
Okay, there's one other item on the consent calendar. It's a property located at 1464 Lexington Street, approximately 7,500 square foot parcel. And it had come before us once before and was and I'm not sure if there were recommendations to adopt the resolution to approve the variances. That's a consent item.
Okay,
I move to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
So regarding the minutes, first I'm going to start with the 25th, and this is when we were discussing the Marvell signs. And I know we had a discussion saying that there would be about 15% of the time would be available for city-related public service announcements. And I thought that got into the motion. I know it's in the discussion here, but wasn't it in the motion?
I believe that it was the motion I made and it was voted. Well, it was voted. I guess everybody agreed to it.
So here it says, in the motion and action, there's no reference here to the 15%. So I don't know if staff wants to go back and revise the minutes after looking at the video. And then minor typo on page 10, they talk about the commission inquired about SP 50 fees, and those are SB 50 fees. So just a minor typo there. And that's all I had for the April 10th minutes.
I had one question on April 10th, if I could.
Sorry, April 25th, yeah.
Okay. And a lot of this will be covered in our meeting tonight, but I just wanted to get a clarification. On page 221, it was talking about the 1,200 square foot allowance, and the last sentence on the second paragraph, it talks about the city is required by state law to at least allow for the efficiency unit, which is defined as 150 square feet unit. Isn't that, aren't we saying it has to be 1,200, or am I just misreading that? It seems kind of, we have to do 1,200, so why are we saying we have to allow at least 150?
Well, there's two different parts of the law. The 150-foot efficiency unit requirement was put in years ago. The 1,200-foot requirement is newer.
That'll supersede?
The 1,200-foot will supersede, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to raise it as an issue. Okay.
Okay, and then regarding the minutes of May 10th. Check my notes here. Yeah, so there was a statement in here that I think it's a typo by the note taker. It's on page 15. And sort of in the middle of the page, it says, "The commission stated that this makes a logical variance in this neighborhood." And I have no idea what that means. Is that a local variance or? Makes a logical variance?
Could it be word order where it makes a variance logical in this neighborhood?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. This makes the variance logical. I thought maybe it was a typo. It didn't make, the word order didn't make any sense. Okay. I mean, to me, it just seemed like it was an appropriate variance because he had talked to his neighbors and that it made sense. Logical just didn't seem to be the right word to use there.
You want to change it to appropriate then?
Yeah. Or a reasonable variance. I don't know. It just, in any case, the next statement that I had was on page 3 of, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3. That was for the previous minutes, the 25th. This is on page 3 of 8 for May 10th. And here it says, "The commission commented that it seems that the city has too strict a default rule on live music because there is really not enough entertainment in the city, and it seems that the default for the city is to allow live music as long as the noise levels outside do not exceed standard noise levels." And that's not the current default for the city. I wish it were, but it says that it seems that the default for the city is to allow live music. Does that make sense?
Should it be disallow? The default is the city disallows that?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, wait. The default is that the city is to allow live music as long as the noise levels outside do not exceed
And-
standard noise levels.
So currently, there's no reference to noise levels outside. The current default is that live music is not allowed.
Okay.
But more recently, it seems like planning has made it so that incidental amplified music is allowed. But live music is still, seems to be default disallowed. And so if you look at all of the alcohol permits that we've issued, it always says live music is not allowed. So I wish it were otherwise.
Yeah, I think we should change the
Those-
minutes then.
So the minutes just don't reflect the current default.
They're incorrect.
And then, let's see. Then, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find all my notes here. Okay, and that's it. That's it for those.
Okay, I make the motion to continue the item 7A with the modifications that have been discussed, which are for the April 25 minutes to change the, to modify the motion made by Commissioner Ikezi on the portion of the time allotted to public announcements on Marvell, at the Marvell site. And also to make the word changing in the minutes from May 20, May 10th?
April 25th.
Oh, April 25th?
Yeah.
And plus the entertainment, live music entertainment verbiage
May 10th.
on May 10th. 3 changes.
And,
And the SB 50.
Oh, yeah, SB 50.
and just before you vote, I finally found the right part of my notes. My notes reflect exactly what you said about the motion. The motion was to approve that item with the requirement that 15% of the time be devoted to city messages. So that was simply an oversight, not including that. But we will bring that back at the next meeting if this motion passes.
Okay.
I'll second those motions.
Okay, motion then to bring it back.
With those edits.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, items set for hearing. The first one is a citywide proposal amending the zoning ordinance regarding the accessory unit development standards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a continuation of prior discussions that occurred on March 8th, 2017 and April 25th, 2017 about proposed amendments to our accessory unit standards in our zoning ordinance to be consistent with recently adopted state bills. So following up on the discussion, the most recent discussion on April 25th, the draft ordinance has been updated to include 6 quantitative design criteria specific to second-story additions for the purposes of an accessory unit. Secondly, we continue to recommend a reduction to 6,000 square feet for the minimum lot size, which I'll discuss further. So of the 6 design criteria, they are fairly consistent with our single-family residential design guidelines. They vary slightly. The first being that the total second floor area of the building should not exceed 66% of the first floor building area. That is 100% consistent with the design guidelines as they are today. Secondly, the floor-to-ceiling height of a second-floor accessory unit must be equal to or less than the average floor-to-ceiling height of the first floor, but in no case less than 7 feet. That 7-foot minimum does come from the building code, so that would be required either way. Thirdly, we are requiring either step backs. So a step back is required if the front wall of the first floor of the main dwelling unit, so if the front wall of the main dwelling unit is the furthest toward the front property line, a 5-foot setback would be required, while in this scenario, in the picture, the garage is the furthest forward toward the front property line, so in that scenario, a 10-foot setback would be required from that wall. Fourthly, we are requiring step backs from the side property line or of 3 feet, or clear story windows have to be provided, and that would be the same for the rear side of the residence. Either a 3-foot step back would be required, or the inclusion of clear story windows. Lastly, for outdoor spaces associated with second-story accessory units, there is a requirement proposed for at least a minimum 15-foot side setback and then a maximum depth of 4 feet for those outdoor areas. So in this scenario depicted, this would not be acceptable for 2 reasons. 1, it's closer than 15 feet to the side property line, and 2, the depth is over 4 feet. So to be clear, this would not be permitted. In regards to the previous discussions about reducing the lot size, we did look at smaller increments as far as the number of lots that fit within each category. So as we previously discussed, we have a little over 16,000 R16L and R18L properties in the city. So by reducing our minimum lot size to qualify for an accessory unit from 7,000 to 6,000, a total of 11,619 lots could potentially qualify for an accessory unit, but that's still assuming that they're able to meet the lot coverage, setback, rear yard coverage requirements. Previously, we discussed potentially reducing it to 6,500 rather than 6,000. So if we were to go that way, only a total of 7,886 lots would qualify, which is only approximately 48% of all R16L and R18L lots, rather than 71% of the total if we were to reduce to 6,000. So for this reason, staff continues to recommend reducing the minimum lot size to 6,000. Also, based on our previous discussions, we took a look at some potential maximum accessory unit size scenarios based on average lot sizes and dimensions in the city. So a typical lot per the minimum lot width is 60 feet wide. Some are smaller, some are bigger. And this is meant to provide a general overview of some common development patterns in the city and what would be the potential approximate coverage for their rear yard where they could have an accessory unit. So I have a couple of scenarios. So in this example, this is a standard lot size, 60 feet wide, 100 feet deep, and it does have the standard 20-foot rear yard coverage from, or rear yard 20-foot rear yard setback, standard and required in both residential zoning districts. And as you can see, so the red line is depicting the required setback requirements, so 5 foot on the rear, 3 foot on the side. And then we do have a requirement that accessory buildings be a minimum of 6 feet separated from the main dwelling unit. So that's what the red line is depicted. So as you can see in this scenario, they wouldn't be able to fit a moderately sized detached unit. They may qualify for an attached unit. And then in this second scenario, this lot is similarly sized, but 66 feet wide and 96 feet deep. However, they have a much larger rear yard area, and given the same constraints with the setback requirements, would be able to qualify or to have a detached unit. They could also do an attached unit in this scenario. So our staff recommendation is for the Planning Commission to recommend to the City Council the adoption of the proposed amendments to chapters 18 and 17 of the City Code.
Okay, Commissioner Jane.
Thank you for doing all that research. I know it was quite a bit. It's interesting that the mode, which means the most common size, is actually between 6,000 and 6,500. So I was pleased to see that we're going to 6,000 in that case. The questions that I have is that when you look at lot coverage for the backyard at 40%, how do you account for decks? Are decks included in the open space? Is that?
So a deck wouldn't count toward your lot coverage because it's not, unless it was a roofed or enclosed deck. So if it doesn't have a roof, it doesn't count.
Okay,
So
okay.
like a patio area wouldn't count, or like
I
a
see.
barbecue area.
Okay, okay. And then,
We haven't done that yet.
okay,
Wait, would that affect the state compliance?
Well, this is about building accessory dwelling units. We have to allow people to have the ability to build them. What the question is whether or not we currently restrict the number of days you can rent out an accessory dwelling unit, or whether you can rent them out at all, and we don't have anything like that on the books.
But we could regardless of where we go with the ADU.
Oh, yeah, it's a totally separate thing.
okay. And then I had actually sent, I don't know, Rebecca, if you had seen this, there was an example on the internet of somebody taking a tough shed and stuccoing it. Okay?
Well,
Yeah,
did-
could you please? Yeah. And so we had this discussion at our last meeting about how to make these ADUs more cost-effective and to have pre-built structures, right? So this is a case on the internet where somebody, and I think if you go down, can you scroll down on this webpage?
Yes.
Yeah, so he shows how he actually stuccos it. I don't know if you can go to the picture where he shows that he's yeah, that one right there. So what he's done is he's taken a tough shed and he's created a office in his backyard. And so I know we had this discussion about having the look and feel be the same as the main house. And I'm all in favor of that, simply because when you're trying to do a ministerial approval, it reduces any of the, let's say, subjectivity in the decision-making. So I'd like to maintain that even, I know with pre-built structures, you can still maintain the look and feel of the main house. And my last question is, we had this incredible back and forth on 167 Claremont, which was a Mackay, Eichler, it was a Mackay
Yeah.
house. And someone wanted to, change the facade of the building. So do you envision any issues in, and I actually went on the internet and did a lot of research and found that in Palo Alto, in one case, the residents voted to do a single-story overlay of a neighborhood so that you couldn't do, in an area that was Eichler's. And then in another neighborhood, they forbade, they did not approve a single-story overlay of a neighborhood with Eichler's. So my question is, how do you have any insight as to how we could avoid this incredible issue we had with 167 Claremont as people decide that, hey, ministerially, it's not even going to hit the radar of anybody to put a second story on a Eichler or a Mackey? Because you're just going to go to the counter, it's going to be approved because it meets all the setbacks and everything. It's got the same slope of the roof. I just am trying to avoid that. Do you have any insight?
Well, essentially, it would be avoided because it is a ministerial action and wouldn't be appealable. So all the back and forth, I know that occurred with that particular project in regards to appeals to several hearing bodies, it wouldn't be possible.
Right. And we're just trying to promote harmony, though. So I understand. It'll just happen, and people won't have much to say about it. But we had talked about trying to make sure that an addition was not taller than the main house, but certainly in areas that are not Eichlers or Mackeys, you want to allow people to put second stories on there. So, I mean, I guess I'm kind of fine to say go ahead and put it on a Mackey as long as it's got the same slope roof, right?
Well, and also per the development standards we've identified, we would be requiring step backs and/or clear-story windows. Clear-story windows are typically consistent with that design.
Right, right. Okay, I just was trying to get some clarity on this so that we avoid these issues. Thank you.
Commissioner Casey?
Thank you very much for the report. So I didn't understand what one of the slides said. That's the table with various scenarios.
So that's based on the 40% rear yard coverage maximum that's in the zoning ordinance currently. So based on the lot sizes in each scenario, we approximated the rear yard coverage maximum.
So that will be the largest ADU size that would be allowed in that scenario? Is that what it means?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, all right. And so your point is that somewhere else in the report, you said that you recommend not limit the bedroom size because those square footage is not very large, so therefore it won't be feasible to cram in a lot of bedrooms. Is
It's
that-
kind of limiting in and of itself, and particularly also with the limitation to one bathroom. The ratio would be a little strange if you had 10 bedrooms and one bathroom or something like that.
So that was the reasoning that you were following in writing that recommendation?
Correct.
Okay, I understand, thank you. And let's see now. That's all I have for now, thank you.
Commissioner Halloran?
Okay. There are a couple of parts on your slide, and I'm not sure if I'm capturing, but I'm speaking from the agenda here. Or what do you call that? I just want to clarify a couple of points. One point, you said 4-foot outdoor piece. And I'm not sure if I understood that. You had an example there that because it, not only was it not a setback, but you also said it was more than 4 feet.
So the depth of the outdoor
And
space,
so that would be a requirement?
yeah, it would 4 feet or less is
Okay.
what's proposed.
Okay, I didn't know that was a requirement.
So that's currently in the residential design guidelines now, so we're just carrying it over.
Another item, you talked about the second floor accessory unit shall be stepped back 3 feet from the rear walls, or, I'm not sure how to say that word,
Clear story.
clerestory windows shall be provided and maintained. Why would we say or? Why wouldn't we just say and they shall be provided? Why are we saying that it's okay?
So a couple of reasons. So the reason we've worded it as an and or for both the side and the rear is for fire purposes, for exiting, because you are required to have larger windows in bedrooms. So we're kind of giving people options on how they want to do their floor plan with the either or, because they do have to have the larger windows for an escape route for bedrooms.
But what you're allowing them is to not have it set back. You're saying they don't have to have it set back.
But I believe the issue is privacy. We are either putting, am I getting that wrong? So we either get a step back or we put it in the window. It's a way up high window, right?
Correct.
So it's not a window you'd peer down into your neighbor's yard through.
But we don't care if it's not set back in that case then?
Correct.
Okay. That's just to allow an easier construction then?
Yeah, so that would allow an easier construction and also allow more flexibility on the floor plan, given the constraints on the window sizes for exiting purposes.
That's basically allowing them some allowance and so they don't have to get the setback. in that case.
Correct.
And, okay, I think my other questions all resolved around that. I appreciate it. I may have something later, but those answer the questions. Yeah.
Commissioner Chahal.
Okay. As a disclosure, I had a long phone discussion with Ian Chimpani on this topic, just as a disclosure on that. Okay. Thank you for all the numbers we got, but I think there are some I'm a numbers guy. I did some calculation myself. So some numbers are not correct on the second sheet. Like total should be, instead of 16,393, it should be 16,685 if you total all of them, and then the number total of 11,619, that goes to 11,913. And that little bit off, just to, if you want to correct the report, that would be nice. If you total those up.
71% should be 74%, I think.
Yeah, if you, and the total is 104% total, all of the total goes to 104%. So that may be the rounding error, yeah.
Yeah, it's due to rounding, because I was just trying to make it as easy to read as possible, but yeah,
Right.
so it's
And-
higher.
And the numbers can be corrected on those, basically, if you total those up, right? My next question is, being a member of ARC committee, the council has decided to send any addition of fourth bedroom to the ARC. And here, I concur with Commissioner Jane's views. Now we are making a full unit, and it will be ministerial. So somebody adding a fourth bedroom, it will come to ARC, and somebody making a full ADU up to 1,200 square foot will not even come to ARC for any review. And that's very contradictory to my opinion. Like, what the goal of the council to send that fourth bedroom was to take care of some issues we had in one particular neighborhood, although that should have been solved as a policy matter in a different way. Like, we should have made some concrete decision on that. But this one is purely this one will purely contradict that thing. And I can give you a scenario, like if somebody has a 2,500 square feet home existing, and they can build a 1,650 square feet second floor on that, 66%. And if they can build a 1,200 square feet ADU without anything coming to ARC, a full unit, maybe now that we are eliminating the second bedroom condition, so.
That's what the state law is saying, 1,200.
And so how are we contradicting ourselves? How we take care of that? That's my first question. How can, what's the use of that fourth bedroom and above coming to ARC if we are doing this thing?
Well, we are trying to preserve what little discretion we have. The standards that the planners have put into the ordinance are trying to give us the most control we have over accessory dwelling units while still complying with the obligation to allow them ministerially. We have to allow them ministerially. We can't send them to ARC. So we're putting in the degree of control we can. If you're concerned that it's too many, we can do things like further restrict the lot size or further restrict other aspects of it. The 1,200 foot we're stuck with, and not sending it to ARC we're stuck with. I mean, you're correct. Those are disparate policies. I mean, if the preference is to send anything expanding a home to ARC beyond a certain degree, then yeah, we are going against that policy by allowing these ministerially. But we have to allow them ministerially in some capacity. So this is we're trying to reach a middle ground of still putting some controls on it, but still allowing them ministerially. And it's hard to strike the balance of what is sufficient control, what is too much control, what is not enough. And I hear the tension there, but I don't have a solution for it because we're obligated to do this. Otherwise, if we don't adopt something now, the state law provisions simply trump our ordinance entirely. We don't have any of our ordinance controls in place.
Oh, if we adopt this thing, our other ordinances are trumped anyway. If we adopt this thing, I'd say I will not, oh, this is not my fourth bedroom, I'm building an ADU on top of my house. And for an ADU, only thing extra is a small kitchen. I make a counter. Hey, here's the kitchen and here's my second home. This, even though it may not be ADU, I'll say it's a ADU. There's nothing more than that, then it doesn't have to come to ARC. The reason I'm saying this thing is like, as planning commissioners, we have to raise this issue to the council to fix the boarding issue so that we have some solution down the line. Because this one further will create issues. There may be instances, any investment property, they can build in the neighborhood where we have the issues. They'll say, oh, no, we are not adding fourth bedroom. We are just adding another ADU. And that boarding issue, which we face so many years, will be facing real music on that because of this thing. So that's my biggest concern. Like, I'm all for ADU, but being on ARC for so many years now and facing that fourth bedroom, fifth bedroom issue, this completely take that away. Applicant will come, hey, this is not a fourth bedroom, this is the 2 more bedrooms and a small kitchen over here, this is the ADU. So how we balance, that's my biggest problem I'm facing right now, how we balance that. And how are we protecting the residents for which we started the process of bringing the fourth bedroom to ARC? They will not be protected at all. That's my biggest concern.
The protections are the standards that we put in, things like the step backs. The fourth bedroom will have to have those step backs. The fourth bedroom will have to comply with the lot coverage and other requirements they put in.
So the current guidelines do have that 66% guidelines, still have it. We have it.
We have the 66?
Yes, we have 66
It's in
second
the-
floor.
The design guidelines.
Design
But not
guidelines.
in the ordinance.
Yeah, so same thing, like we still do follow those guidelines when we are hearing those cases, right? So,
Kind of- But they can exceed it. Here, we're saying you can't exceed it.
no, ideally, they cannot exceed it. Like, we can approve it because if they can justify something, but ideally, they cannot. Yeah, as a guideline, they cannot exceed it, right?
So that fourth bedroom issue came up at the April 24th meeting, and Gloria, who was the staff who was at that meeting, mentioned something like maybe it's time to revisit the fourth bedroom
Right.
review issue maybe it doesn't make sense to require ARC review for fourth bedroom anymore, given this ADU situation.
So,
That's been a discussion item for quite a while.
right, so
Right.
my suggestion is like, we have to be forceful to send a message to the council that we have to look at that issue, which is a real big issue, or we come up with something, boarding ordinance or something which can take care of these issues. That's my concern. Otherwise, that fourth bedroom issue is just gone away with all this thing. We are circumventing that, and it doesn't have any role to play on that. It's just a wastage of time of staff and architecture committee as such, for that matter. So, and the other thing is like, we have decided ADU on the second floor, we have attached ADUs, and do we have a condition for detached ADU as a 6 feet detached minimum? Is that, Rebecca, is that correct?
Can you repeat the
For the
question?
detached ADU, what's the minimum detached?
Between the main dwelling unit, it's 6 feet, and that's standard for all accessory buildings.
So I don't understand the logic of that, because when you can have an attached ADU, you can have a ADU right on top of the house, and even on some circumstances, let's say even if you have 1,200 square feet ADU on the second floor, if somebody have a room to add more onto that, can they have another bedroom on top of that, ADU plus a bedroom?
Yes, they could, but in that case, they would have to go to architectural committee because it would be beyond the scope of just an accessory unit.
Okay, so why are we taking any logic of having a 6 feet detached condition?
So the 6 feet is a fire code requirement between the main dwelling unit and the accessory building.
But I read in this report, the California Building Code does not require fire-rated separation between attached accessory units. So logically, I'm talking about logically, if the attached unit does not require a fire code, how come detached require that?
Attached means it's all the same building.
Right.
Detached, the fire code has this separation requirement between all buildings because if one burns down, they don't want the next one to immediately go up in flames. 6 feet is considered the minimum distance to avoid that from happening immediately.
So why-
It's either one building or it's two, and you separate them by the minimum amount that's safe.
Okay, I don't understand logic of, even for attached units, because they are two independent houses, nobody knows what's happening on the other side. The fire code, it should be some fire rated, but I can't challenge the California law on that, yeah, so that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wang.
That's me again.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Jane.
Sorry. So there was one sentence in here that I didn't quite understand that maybe you can clarify. This is on page 5, and it's in section 9, and this appears several places, but it says, for the purposes of rear yard coverage, the rear yard is measured from a line extending 20 feet from the full width of the lot at the rear property line. Can somebody draw me a diagram of, what if it's a triangle-shaped lot or something? I don't quite understand what that means.
So if it's an oddly shaped lot, we still have definitions that would help us determine which was the rear lot line in that scenario. And so from that line, 20 feet beyond it is considered the rear yard. So that's where the coverage maximum would apply.
So are you saying that the rear yard is not defined between the house and the fence?
Correct.
It's defined as just 20 feet from the furthest back part of the fence, is that correct?
Yeah, so from your rear property line extending 20 feet.
And that's it, regardless of where the house is placed?
Correct. And that's just based on the minimum setback requirement of 20 feet. So for example, it would be about the width of the accessory unit cartoon.
Okay, it was just not clear to me what that meant.
And frankly, I was a little confused when I read it as well. The planners put it in thoughtfully because it turns out we didn't have that sort of language just in the basics of our zoning ordinance. When we adopt a new zoning ordinance, we'll need to make sure to include that just for all houses. How do you define rear yard? So they've added it here because we were lacking a definition.
I see, okay, that clarifies it, thank you.
Commissioner Casey.
Okay, so we're worried about boarding house, so are there any constraints on like people who want to be real eager and want to dig like a huge basement?
A basement under the accessory unit?
Well, create an accessory unit in the basement. Because there are scenarios like that. Some of the old homes in the old quad, sometimes people raise the whole house to rebuild the foundation, and then they start to think, wow, this is a great time to build a big basement and expand my living room. And a lot of people do that. So if they decide to turn that into ADUs, what happens? And if we have no restraints on the bedroom size, then we're looking at another mini dorm.
I mean, what you're describing sounds like it could be approved as an attached dwelling unit, a basement unit, as long as it meets building code for things like egress. Our code revisions wouldn't disallow that.
So what are the specific constraints that would apply to people who want to build ADU in the basement? What's the maximum size, and can they go as big as they want?
So as an attached unit, they would still have to comply with the square footage allowances of an attached unit, which is up to...
50%,
Yeah, 50% of your existing living area.
okay. But that would be the only constraint I can think of.
Yeah, if they're able to meet the egress requirements, and usually basements do have their own entry point, so that wouldn't be an issue.
Now, the second-story unit requires a stairway inside the structure. What about the basement unit then?
So usually a basement would already have an exterior access. If it didn't, they would need to provide its own independent access. It couldn't, it couldn't rely on the house or the door that's inside the house.
So we would allow an external access door.
The concern with the staircase is that it's not a outdoor exposed staircase. It's internalized, or it's, it's enclosed, basically.
So there's no no restrictions on people who want to build door directly going into the basement?
No, and I think doors to basements are pretty common. Existing, I mean, not for an accessory unit,
Well,
but...
I've seen that become an issue with some people who want to build basement, and we've disallowed it, so I'm not sure what the rules are.
So it's probably disallowed because they weren't presenting it as an accessory unit, and the concern was that they were going to use it as such, but not permit it properly.
But now with this ADU ordinance, they would be allowed to. It would be a ministerial approval, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that raises a big concern for me because, I mean, some of these big houses, if they decide to build a big basement and add tons of bedrooms, we're looking at a mini dorm.
Commissioner O'Halloran.
Just a comment, I think, one of the purposes of having these ADU allowances is very close to getting to a boarding house situation. It's allowing more people to live on the property, so that's just a comment.
Right, exactly, but, I'm sorry, maybe I should request for,
But no,
allow
that was
what
just
you
a comment.
finish.
The question I had was, we have said we're removing any cap from the number of rooms, but we have a cap of one bathroom for it, okay? So we could still put a cap on it. I mean, it may not be very meaningful to put a cap on it to be 2, and if you wanted 3, then you'd have to go to the architectural committee, but we could put a 2-room cap on the accessory unit, can't we?
You could, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Casey, and then back to Commissioner Jane.
So, yes, I would like to see the 2-bedroom at most allowed in the ADU, not the unlimited number of bedrooms, because we're concerned about, yes, we do want to add more housing, but we are concerned about people wanting to build mini dorms in specific parts of town, namely near the Santa Clara University in the Old Quad area, and the problem is already bad there.
Commissioner Jane.
So, I attend the NERC meetings, and there's these legal issues about what you can restrict in terms of housing situations. And it seems like the most expeditious way is to really restrict behavior. And so, we've had mini dorms across the street from our house, and the main issues we have are parking and noise from parties. So if we find these people when they have big parties and are too loud, that will discourage that behavior. And then eventually we might have to get to, permitted parking in some of the areas of the old quad. So I see that that may be a better way to avoid the issue of the boarding house problem. I see this law as being really essential to get affordable housing in the city of Santa Clara. And when we look at, that really we could be adding up to, 16,000 extra units, right? Or was it 11,000? I forget. 11,000. So we could be adding up to 11,000 more housing units in the city without ending up with these massive 5-story structures on El Camino Real. So that's my comment, is to really think about just restricting behavior and fining for the noise and the parking.
Just a general reminder, we still need to have public hearing.
Okay. Let's open it up to the public. Is there anybody that would like to speak on this matter? Please line up.
Chair Kelly, I would like to respectfully request that you keep the mic open, since there's no one else in the public to respond, so that we may have a dialogue, and so that you don't limit my time.
Let's limit it to 4 minutes for your comments, and then we'll ask questions, obviously.
You can cross-examine me forever if you,
Okay.
if you like. So I think that everyone knows where I stand on this issue. And I think that Commissioner Chahal, has brought up some great points. And, as full disclosure, he said he spoke with me. Well, I've spoken with all of you. I consider, everyone on the dais, my colleagues and, and friends, with the exception of Commissioner Wang, who I don't know, but you can check my references. That
We got your email.
I've spent a lot of, time and effort, trying to make the city as best as, as I can. But I hope that this will be as inclusive as possible. As you know, I think that it should be based on, percentages of the gross area, as opposed to, a lot size, 5,000 square foot lot, 6,000 square foot lot, 7,000 square foot lot. But, if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to discuss that. But I would certainly hope that, this meets the intention of what, this ordinance, should be, and that's to be inclusive.
Okay. I actually do have a question for you, and also for staff, if you can see if this is possible. When I was dealing with my own house, internally, staff could approve like a variance, as long as the variance was within 5% of the setback standards. Is there a possibility for the square footage for the minimum lot of 6,000, if they meet all the coverage setbacks, can we have staff have the possibility of a 5% variance, so a lot size of 5,700 could be approved if it met all the setback requirements? Is that something that we could recommend to council? And would that be acceptable to you?
Who goes first? Lee? Or?
Let's let staff go first.
So to me, it sort of seems like if there are enough situations where an accessory dwelling unit could be approved at a lot size less than 6,000 square feet, which frankly I think is generally pretty tough, then we should just reduce the minimum lot size. I really, from my standpoint, state law is asking us to create a ministerial process, and just want to really hew to that.
Okay.
So let me respond to that. Is state law requiring a ministerial process? Or is it recommending?
Yes. No, it's required.
It is requiring a ministerial process.
Okay.
Really? And, okay, so Santa Clara as a charter city has to follow a ministerial process?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All charter cities, all general law cities have to follow this mandatory process.
Okay. Let me ask staff something. If Mr. Champion has to come in and ask for a variance because his lot's 5,700, and he meets all the setback requirements, approximately what would he be paying in fees to go through the variance process?
So the variance fee is $1,600.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so, I think that if I were to come back and say, I want to apply for a variance, staff is going to ask me, what are my unique conditions? What is unusual about this? In my first, my first response would be to say that the ordinance was written poorly. That's the unique conditions. If I want to build a 3,500 square foot house on my 5,700 square foot lot, I can. If I want to build a on my 5,700 square foot lot, I have a 1,075 square foot house. I cannot build, with this ordinance right now, I cannot build a 600 square foot accessory dwelling unit, but I can build a 3,500 square foot lot. Please tell me, Lee or Xander, how that is equitable, that I can build a 3,500 square foot house on my lot, which would diminish all of the buildable area, but cannot build 600 square feet for my aging father. Xander?
I am
And
here
believe-
to advise on matters of law,
Oh,
not
what-
policy.
Why don't you bring up the Constitution like you did last time?
Well, I can make a
that was a-
response.
Let's let all the commissioners
Teasing,
ask
Xander.
questions of you and your concerns. Let's go to Commissioner Jane.
I totally understand that argument. I'm sympathetic to that argument. Unfortunately, we are trying to make this, in fact, we recently passed a variance for an ADU in the old quad, and it was, these matters are always issues of neighborhood friendliness and neighborly construction. And so in this case, the applicant had gone and talked to all of his neighbors and gotten them all to agree to having this variance. And we were very sympathetic to that. And I am trying to make it easy on staff to have very simple rules for what to approve and what not to approve. If we start getting into some messy calculations or
No, but
I
Suggs,
mean,
what I'm saying
no,
is that
I understand, you could build
it's a
this.
percentage. It's just, if you leave it to a percentage, it will normalize itself. If you say, okay, it has to be a lot size of 6,000 square feet. If you make it to a lot size of 4,000 square feet and they only have the percentage of 40% detached or 50% attached, then that fixes itself. It doesn't matter. You can do every single R16, every single R18, and a percentage.
I totally get that argument. and I am very sympathetic to that argument. I don't like the idea of just dropping our number down to 5,700. I like the idea that we're actually doing a calculation, because I'm an engineer.
No, I know. So as you're an engineer, a percentage should make sense.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
So if you do 6,000 square foot lot, 7,000, 5,000, what is the concern with a 6,000, 5,000, 5,500,
I agree.
lot?
Okay, let's let Commissioner O'Halloran ask his question.
Okay, in some ways, it's just a response to it. One of the biggest pushbacks on these accessory units is parking and traffic in the neighborhood. In an accessory unit, the idea is, yeah, you will have additional traffic parking issues here, and that's one of the reasons we were talking about having the one bathroom, so that way you're not having too many people in that unit. So again, the whole question about ADUs, where do you draw a line, has a lot to do with what is the impact on the neighborhood. And that's why I think if you had to go to a variance, you could talk to the neighbors and ask them, what is that impact on it? But an accessory unit by itself is naturally going to have a parking and traffic impact on it, because now you have two families, or I guess we can't even say
But Mike,
families.
as I understand, the parking is not an issue in this.
Well, no, the parking is an issue as an impact. Here, if your ADU is approved, you do not have to have specific parking. But the fact that you are building an ADU does have an impact on us. So it's something we can't ignore. But I mean, that's one of the issues about ADUs, is it has a traffic impact. What they're saying is, if it meets all the guidelines, we can't do anything about it. But what we're saying is we do want to make a guideline, and the guideline is, the 6,000 square foot. The streets were built for larger units, and part of the idea there was that you'd have parking available. ADUs are infringing upon that original design, and so that's why there's a question about how many ADUs do you allow on it. So it's not just a question of, we want to allow as many ADUs as we can. I think some of it is a concern about the impact.
I'm sorry, I'm missing your point about whether,
Okay.
Well, the point is that ADUs, the pushback on ADUs is.
no, I'm missing your point on the parking.
Let's let Commissioner O'Casey ask her question.
Okay, so let me play the devil's advocate, and if we were to reduce the number of, the size, the minimum lot size, what could be some of the adverse impact that this commission would be concerned about? Commissioner O'Halloran raised the parking issue. I'm wondering if there are other issues. And another issue that I'd like to point out is, I'm kind of on the fence with, what's the appropriate minimum lot size, and that's why I'm bringing this up. The smallest dwelling unit that's allowed according to this is 150 square foot. And so according to the scenarios in the staff report, even the smallest lot of 4,600 square foot lot would allow around 368 square foot of ADU in a typical scenario. So that's bigger than the 150 foot. So what are the other impediments to reducing the minimum lot size?
And if I could just interject, I misspoke earlier when you asked about the 150 feet. There's the numerical restriction, which says we can't make our minimum size less than 1,200 square foot. But then there's also the effect of our regulations. We can't impose setbacks and stepbacks and height limitations, et cetera, that don't allow for 150 feet at least. So one is just the numerical restriction, we have to allow 1,200. The other is we can't prescribe a 150-foot efficiency unit from being built.
Oh, that's what
So-
that 150 means. Oh,
Yes.
okay, I understand.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion
Oh, okay,
earlier.
okay. So I'm kind of on the fence on this issue.
Okay, all right. Did you have another question?
No, that was my point. Was
Oh, all right.
there's a pushback on the number of ADUs, and one of the pushbacks is,
Mr. Champion, I am totally sympathetic. I think if we end up approving 6,000, you would have a very good chance of getting an accessory unit approved. So in a way, having us to go through this and seeing what staff has shown us that, look here again, on lot sizes of 6,000, we're looking at an accessory unit probably no bigger than 480 square feet. And at 6,500, probably no more than 670. We would expect on your lot, probably between 400 and 440 for an accessory unit, which is really just the size of a bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, because that's really,
Can you go back to the previous slide?
uh,
So Steve, if you look at just the 5,500 to 6,000, that's an additional 17%. Well, that shows that that would be inclusive.
and I think what we want to do is go in steps, because if we don't see huge numbers, there's always a potential that we could come down further, but we have to set an arbitrary limit.
No, I know, but Steve, what I'm trying to avoid is you had to go through a PD rezoning to get your accessory
And it
unit.
was very expensive.
And it was very expensive, and that's what I'm trying to avoid, is that we have to do a rezoning process, because we didn't have a clear ordinance.
Yeah, but what I am saying is a variance is less expensive than what I went through
Yeah.
on a rezone. And when I'm looking at $1,600, yeah, it seems like a lot, but I
No,
paid
I
like,
know, $1,600, that's, I mean, in the scheme of things.
I think the fact that if you meet normal setback requirements, your house, based on what you said here, is that it's not a large house. And I believe that staff would look at the size of your home, the lot setbacks, to determine if a variance was reasonable, and I think you would have your variance approved.
I know, $1,600, I can pay $1,600, Steve, that's not the most important cost, but the variance is more difficult because if you've ever gone through, I spent 10 years on this dais.
We are aware-
I know how difficult it is to get a variance through. And they're going to say, show us why your situation is unique, show us why it's, unusual. That's more difficult than $1,600.
Okay, and I understand it. Let us close public hearing, we'll have the debate.
Motion to close public hearing.
Thanks.
We have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Discussion? Let's start on this side this time. Commissioner Trahal.
So the numbers came, right? If we look at the numbers, it's a very debatable topic right now, like putting a cap on the total square footage of the lot size or putting a cap on the lot coverage. So I have a question for staff, can we put a condition, let's say a lot size, irrespective of the lot size, if somebody wants to build a one-story, not second story, one-story house, and they adhere to all the condition we are putting up, like setbacks, 40% lot coverage. Only thing I'm talking about this is because if somebody has a very small house, existing house, how can that person be accommodated versus somebody already has a 2,500 square foot house and he can get a second story with 1,200 square feet? How we can bring that particular segment into the ADU? Like 40% lot coverage, all setbacks have to be met, and your lot size doesn't matter. If your existing lot is only existing house is only 1,200 square feet versus somebody's 3,500, as Ian mentioned. How can we bring that into the ordinance somehow?
Yes, you could restructure the ordinance so you didn't have a minimum lot size. There are a number of other constraints in the ordinance, like you're saying, lot coverage, setbacks, et cetera. So that's totally a way to go if the commission and eventually the council is comfortable with the idea that this process isn't going to impose negative impacts on the neighbors.
Okay. Okay. And on the other side, I am of a restrictive, I like the restrictive part of it because variance is one option when somebody really needs it. They can always come back with the, like, all the things I'm talking about. Hey, my lot size is this, but it's not meeting the guideline, but my coverage is very small. And comparing to the parking, like parking is going to be a problem anyway. If we are not restricting the parking on all of these, like more than 50% of the housing, like if you go that, we are only restricting 30% and 30% of the houses. So 70% houses are eligible, right? Yeah, 70% of the houses are eligible for ADUs. But what I'm saying is, and another question I had was, do we know how many ADUs we have in the city currently? I know for the last 8 years, I got a figure 25 ADUs. Do we know how many ADUs total we have in the city right now?
We don't have that information partly because many of them were built prior to the zoning standards, so or prior to our building process, so we wouldn't have records on some of them.
Okay. So I'm trying to find out a way where you can accommodate a real genuine cases of ADUs on a smaller lot. If there is a way out, like as I mentioned, if everything else is met, is how we can do that, how we can put that thing in the ordinance, basically. Those are my comments.
Let's go to Commissioner Jane and then Wang.
So I was actually thinking along the same lines as Commissioner Chahal. So I would like to propose a hybrid ordinance, one where if you're only at one story, we restrict, if everything is at one story, we eliminate the minimum lot coverage and you just go by the 40% lot coverage. I mean, we eliminate the minimum lot size and you go by lot coverage. If it is a two-story or like an attached on the second story, then we maintain the 6,000 square foot lot size. And because we know that when we're all one story, you're not going to have issues of massing and privacy and all of that. So if everything stays at one story, then we just eliminate the lot size and you just go by a calculation of lot coverage. So that's my proposal.
Okay, Commissioner Wang.
I'm trying to digest your proposal because up to that point, I still struggle with what I said last time, which may be a little opposite from the rest of the commissioners, that I'm concerned about the movement down to 6,000 or even below. I just think that if there was a way to do a more iterative process to see what kind of volume happens even at 7,000 or 6,000. So I just don't understand, I don't appreciate, I guess, the work it takes to change it later if we find out that 7,000 is too restrictive. So I'm kind of on the opposite end on this. I worry about, it seems that everything we've been doing in Santa Clara the last few years is very big and bold, and then we're not able to turn this thing back fast enough, and then we get a lot of public outcry. So I struggle with this piece still. But I've been listening, and I appreciate the concerns and also the fact that there's many people who are justified with trying to do something very reasonable in your own home. So any feedback on I mean, I don't appreciate how painful it would be later on to go back and say, oh boy, we were too restrictive, we met state law, but we should really loosen this thing up a little bit more. Because I feel like we're doing it all right now because it feels too painful to do it later.
No, it would just be another item on the work program. I think that since it's in front of us now, we should come up with the best standards that we can. Also knowing
Best
that,
standards we can't decide, so I mean,
Right.
so,
but also just knowing that in other jurisdictions like San Jose, where there, initial predictions were people rushing through the doors to process accessory dwelling units, the total number processed usually is relatively small. So you'd think if 5% of the people responded to build accessory units, that would be amazing. So,
My question-
on the
what
order
is-
of a
we
couple
don't-
hundred accessory dwelling units would be a total surprise.
but we don't know, right? And so I'm still struggling to know how hard it is to change it later. If we were to keep it at 7,000, for example, and nothing happened, then how painful would it be then to lower to 65 and then 6,000? I'm trying to move this forward, but at the same time, I'm still concerned about the unintended consequences.
It's just a zoning text amendment, so it's just, I mean, all zoning text amendments have to come before the planning commission, then go to city council, go through first and second reading, and then 30 days later, adoption. It just depends on how willing the planning commission is and the city council is to adopt such a change, and how much public input you get.
Yeah, so I would
This
say.
ordinance, as you can see, has been taking
I know,
some
that's,
effort,
but that's my point, right? This ordinance is taking forever, and we're trying to, find all these different formulas or methods of how to make it work. But I think, to some extent, what I walk away with at a very kind of, let's get it passed or move forward level is, one is that I feel very comfortable at the 7,000 minimum. This is current. And I feel comfortable with the two-room max. And for me, we should move that forward and adhere to what is being asked of us and then see what the result of that is. That's my take on it. So I know I'm opposite from some of what you're saying, but I just see this as something where we tend to go too big and we're still debating all the little pieces and we don't really understand what the unintended consequences of this might be.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran.
I agree that to a certain extent, the numbers are arbitrary on there. I think the goal is to have more housing and more units. But again, numbers are fairly arbitrary when you say 70% or 30% parking impact. Well, if you just limit it to 17%, it's a little bit less is all. It's just an arbitrary number. My question is, if we had a number and then what we would require in Mr. Chemney's case is that he pursue a variance, what would the reaction of staff be to his request for a variance? What were the types of reasons that you had asked him enough to say, okay, you got a variance and now we'll send it to, I don't know if it's Planning Commission or Architectural Review?
Ultimately, it would come down to the variance findings, which include a unique physical or other constraint on the property that's unique to it in comparison to other properties that are situated similarly.
But if he came back with having talked to neighbors and neighbors supported his move, would that help him move forward? I'm just wondering, what are the obstacles to him? At what point do you say, no, you've not made the code? We're not going to allow you to even pursue a variance.
The obstacles are ultimately the permit findings that we're required to make per our zoning ordinance, our law.
which are physical conditions, that there are unique circumstances applicable to the property that justify granting the variance. The fact that neighbors support the application may be persuasive testimony, but that doesn't go into the findings you make. The findings have to be that there's something unique about the property.
Okay. So he may actually be stuck then if he's
If
less
you-
than 6,000, if that's the number we end up with?
If you can't make the requisite findings, you cannot grant the variance.
And it wouldn't even come back to us?
It would come before you. you would be the ones that would have to decide whether or not the findings can be made. You might get a recommendation of denial by staff.
Okay. So he could still pursue a variance.
Absolutely.
And it would come to us, but he'd have to
Yes.
pursue it, and it would cost him $1,600 at least to do that. But would the staff in some way obstruct him from coming to the planning commission? Okay. Okay. So a variance is still pursuable.
But hard to get. We don't issue them very often because it's hard to make those findings. I mean, the classic case of a variance is the really steep slope where you can only build on the very front of the lot, so you waive the setback requirements in that case. But, you know, the lot's 5,700 square feet. Well, if every other lot in the neighborhood is too, it's not really a unique condition. So it's hard to make those findings, frankly.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Casey?
So I remember reading about what Palo Alto's doing, and I guess their minimum lot size requirement is 5,000 square foot. So, you know, Commissioner O'Halloran is right. The number is pretty arbitrary.
Okay. I just wanted to make a couple points. I would like whatever we send to council, to whatever lot size we decide on, that council does look at the fourth bedroom requirements. So fourth bedrooms on lots under 6,000 do not go to architectural review. I would support Commissioner Casey's idea that we limit it to 2 bedrooms, a max. And to be quite frank, based on average accessory unit between being 440 to 480, that they're most likely going to be 1 bedrooms. I would like to see, and maybe staff can tell me if this is possible, because parking's, although we can't require a parking space, can we require something like overhead storage or storage cabinets in the garage so people will actually use the garage for parking as a requirement? Is that something we can ask for? Because we have been asking for that on other projects that have come in front of us to make sure people actually use the garage.
Well, first, just a correction. We can require parking in areas that are far from public transit. If you remember back to that first meeting, we had that map where we drew where all the transit lines were, and there's sort of like little donut holes. So in those spots, you could actually require parking for ADUs. But our proposal is not to do that, mainly for simplicity. It wasn't that many places you could do that.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
So my question is, because I have actually both in my garage, and I actually have 2 parking spots, primarily because I do have storage cabinets along one side of the garage, and overhead storage rack, which I utilize for storage. And what I've seen, when I've seen my neighbors open up their garages, they rarely have more than 1 car, if any. Neighbor down the street who rebuilt his house, added a 2-car garage, and it's stuffed full with stuff. So I know requiring like storage racks or cabinets doesn't seem like a lot, but it does open up some parking. I mean, we've asked for it, and developers have said, "Oh yeah, we'll add it."
Well, what's before you is
We
something
can't
to
ask for that.
facilitate accessory dwelling units, and it does not provide for any parking. So are you suggesting that
I'm just
we add
trying-
something that says, if there is a garage there in use, we want you to add storage to it? Because we can't require the garage itself.
Yeah, no, not requiring a garage, just if there's an existing garage, can you just add overhead storage or storage cabinets in the garage? Is that something we could ask for? Because the new home builders have been doing it for us.
What we're saying is you have to use your garage.
Basically, what we're saying, we want your garage available for parking.
We can't require the garage itself. We can't require them to add a garage, but can we add something that says, if you happen to have a garage and you're not converting that garage to the accessory dwelling unit, you want to require that they add additional storage to that
Yes.
garage.
Can we ask that for that?
Important is they have to use the garage as a garage. That's the more important.
Yeah, I
Whether
mean-
they want to add storage or that's not important. Can we
we
make
ask
sure that garage is ready for the parking and garage is being used for parking two cars? That's more important.
So I think that that is too invasive because you're going to have the cops come by and check. When you have an HOA, it's easier to enforce. But when you have a single-family house, it's very difficult. And again, we can't require a physical garage. They could just have open air spaces, two spaces or a carport or something. So I can't imagine having that requirement in there. Again, you know, I just think it's too invasive to require that. It's not enforceable.
Okay. Well, then I would just like to recommend that we have a motion that takes into account Commissioner Jane's recommendation that single-story do not have a minimum lot size, and Commissioner Casey's recommendation that accessory units not be any larger than 2 bedrooms. That's it for me.
Okay, I make a motion to approve, to recommend that, oh, where's that thing? To recommend that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt the proposed amendments to chapters 18.06, 18.10, and 18.12 of the zoning ordinance and chapter 17.15 of the city code with a maximum of 2 bedrooms allowed in the ADU and no minimum lot size for single-story attached or detached ADU, and 6,000 square foot minimum lot size for second-story ADU.
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
May I ask a clarification before you vote, please?
Okay.
Sorry to interject. So the seconds, there's no maximum lot size if the accessory dwelling unit is 1 story. But what if do you care about the height of the main house? Are we just talking about the accessory?
I think we're talking about...
Well, I mean, all the restrictions in this, the proposed ordinance applies, which limits the massing, the height, maximum size of the ADU, except we are no longer imposing the minimum lot size if the ADU is not on the second floor. And
You could have a 2-story house, for instance, and a detached 1-story ADU unit. In that case, you would not have a
minimum lot size.
Yeah, that wasn't how I understood the suggestion. I thought
Oh.
Well, my original suggestion was everything was 1 story.
everything was one
I
story.
don't really care. We
Okay.
could have the main house, it's existing.
Well, I mean, if somebody already has a
I
two-story
think-
house, then what does it matter?
My interpretation was just no minimum lot size if it was a single-story structure. If they're going 2 stories, then we're going to have a minimum lot size.
On the accessory unit or on the primary?
Either way, if they,
If the primary was
if the
2,
primary was 2, we would have a minimum lot size. If the primary home was a single-story and they were attaching an accessory unit or detaching an accessory unit, there would be no minimum lot size. Okay.
Okay,
that's kind of how I
for a
understood that.
discussion point of view. So I come up with the situation, as of today, somebody has a single-story house, single-story ADU get approved on a lot size of less than 6,000. After a year, he comes back, he say, I want to add 2 more bedrooms on my main dwelling unit. How will you do that? You will restrict him forever that you cannot add any bedrooms?
At a second floor.
That's a question for our staff.
Well, the 40% lot coverage still
No, lot
applies.
coverage doesn't go on the top. You can build it. Lot coverage is only at the ground
You're
floor.
talking about somebody who wants to add more bedrooms on the second floor.
Second floor.
Is that a condition of approval that we can restrict them?
That would be a standard design review process through the planning division.
So in effect, they could do it. They could come back and have a second unit or a second story on the primary unit.
That's
Still have
correct.
their ADU.
Right.
It'll go to
that's correct.
ARC, right?
Yeah, it would be a discretionary process, not a ministerial process, because it's the standard design review.
Yeah, but even if it comes to ARC, we don't have any right to stop him. ARC can't do anything unless there's a way to restrict that, put that condition. And if staff says no,
That's kind of my understanding too, is that we can't stop. the
that's
second
what I'm saying. So basically, trying to balance it out, like if we have to make it restrictive, it has to be made restrictive in a way which is practically possible. And as much as I... That's the same thing as lot coverage, basically, sort of.
If we add an FAR rule for lot sizes under 6,000, that would prevent somebody from adding a second story.
Me, stuff.
Comment from staff?
So, yeah, adding additional constraints like FAR could be a possibility. At some point, it becomes a matter of administering all this stuff. Is there, I guess my question is there an additional benefit
I'm just
to
saying-
adding an FAR cap?
I'm just saying that, let's say, we say under 6,000, there's no lot size.
Right.
The lot coverage is already 40%. If we make the FAR 40%, then we cover forever additions to the second story.
Would that be just on these properties?
Yeah,
So it's still unique to this ADU code.
yeah. And then it wouldn't go to ARC.
If you add an accessory dwelling unit on a one-story, on a lot where everything is one story and it's less than 6,000 square foot, there will be an FAR limitation of
0.4.
0.4.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
That is legal. If you want to do that, you could add that
So that gets us around
limitation.
the issue that,
Right.
That would prevent second-story bedrooms after building the one-story accessory dwelling unit. Yes.
That's right. Okay.
Okay, would the maker like to amend his motion?
I like somebody else to word this because I'm confused.
I would be happy to. Okay. Do I have to read the whole resolution again?
Before you read it, yeah, I think our planners have a
Yeah,
concern.
I just want to clarify, how would the not knowing the various sizes of whatever the one-story house would be, how would implementing the 40% FAR limit their ability to do a second story if they have a smaller house? You know, do you understand the question?
Yeah.
If the
Yeah.
FAR starting out is less than
That's right.
0.4,
They could still put a second story on.
right?
Yeah. It would just limit them from putting a...
It'll reduce the number of
Yes,
houses they can
that's
put
correct.
second stories on.
That's correct.
It won't prohibit them.
Yes. Okay. Do I have to read the whole resolution again?
You better.
Okay. This Planning Commission recommends that City Council amend chapters 18, I'm sorry, I lost it here. Okay. 18.06 definitions, 18.10 regulations for R181L, single-family larger lot area zoning districts, and 18.12 regulations for R1, R6L, single-family zoning districts of Title 18 zoning and Chapter 17.15 property developments of Title 17 developments of the Code of the City of Santa Clara related to accessory dwelling units with the recommendations that for lot sizes of 6,000 and greater. The current ordinance as written applies for lot sizes of less than 6,000, that we restrict the lot coverage to 40% and the FAR to 40%. And the accessory dwelling unit can have no more than 2 bedrooms.
Do we have a second?
So,
Oh, go ahead.
just as a discussion, I wanna. So if they have to build a second story, the ADU sort of has to be demolished. Under 40, like if they're already under 40, FAR, 0.4 FAR, they cannot build the second story. But if they change their mind down the line,
But
so
but
the
once,
ADU has to go.
once they've added the ADU,
Uh-huh.
they're probably pretty close to a 0.4 FAR.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Let's
there
say-
would be no way they could add a second
So
story.
in case they want to build the second story later
They
on,
have to demolish the
ADU.
That's
And
correct.
is that, can we force somebody to demolish the ADU or change the status of the ADU to?
Yeah, we wouldn't approve the second story because you have to meet the lot coverage and FAR.
It's going to be discretionary, so it's going to go.
I don't have a concern about that, no.
No concern?
That's fine.
Okay.
Can I just ask for clarification? Your motion didn't mention anything about being one story. Are we just focusing on the FAR, not worrying about the number of stories? It'll take care of itself in a sense? with the FAR?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's my take.
So
Do we get a
is there
second?
second to Commissioner James' motion? If there's no second, the motion dies.
Someone else needs to make a motion then.
Anybody else want to second it? Can I second it?
Absolutely.
I'll second it.
Have discussion, Chair?
Yeah, I will let, now that we have a motion, we can discuss it. Commissioner Casey.
Okay, so this lot coverage of 40% and FAR of 40% for 6,000 square foot or less, how will this impact the, people who want to have 2 stories? If you want to build a second story ADU, as long as everything's below 40%, they can do whatever they want, and as long as they meet the other requirements in the ordinance? Is that what it means?
If you're over 6,000.
No, under 6,000.
No.
No, that's not what the commissioner said. I mean, that's what Xander clarified. I'm just trying to,
Well, I mean, you'd still be subject to all the other standards, so you've got
Correct.
the step back requirements and all that.
correct, but they're allowed to
But,
build
yeah,
a
if it's a
second
really-
story ADU.
Yeah, if
Right.
if it's a particularly small house, this could potentially still allow for a second story ADU, yes.
Okay.
Okay, that wasn't my understanding of. That wasn't my understanding. My understanding was what we were doing for under 6,000, we were saying nothing could be over 2 stories.
But since we can't restrict that, what we're restricting is how big of a second story they can put.
Okay, so then it's the FAR that's making the restriction. And so if they could still possibly go a
But-
second story.
But you can start with both, I mean, you could combine the two motions, I mean, you could start with,
So that's what I thought you had intended, that we were going first floor only, 1 floor only.
But he said that we can't do that.
No, you can. You can start, the Commissioner Shahal identified the problem of if it's less than 6,000 square foot, somebody could add a second story later on. But you could still start with the premise that if you're less than 6,000 square feet, it has to be one story to build an accessory dwelling unit. And then the FAR will kick in as well to help prohibit later building a second story on your main house.
Yeah, and that was my understanding of the motion. That's why I would approve the motion if it included that, if that was the assumption.
Can we add that restriction that initially it's restricted to single story?
But if we did that,
Friendly amendment, yeah, that would be
but
fine.
if we did that, then what's going to happen is that you will not be allowed to build a second-story ADU, but you still will be allowed to build additional second-story bedrooms. So, I mean, what's the difference?
No, because the FAR will kick in.
FAR kicks it.
Yeah,
Whatever
but
they
what
can-
we're concerned about is the
Later on.
second floor, and you can't do that. You know, if we restrict the ADU to only one story, people can still build second story to their home. As long as,
Within the-
as long as you meet the FAR, you can.
But
But on a small lot, by the time you've added the ADU, you're going to hit your 40%
you're going to be pretty close to
lot
the
coverage.
maximum lot coverage that you can put. So you're not going to build.
In practicality, but, you know, I mean, I guess I'm going for elegance.
Yeah, adding a second story. Yeah. Yeah. And my thinking is, people are not going to build a second story to add a bedroom. They might build it to add a master bedroom where they have some, like a 600 square foot master bedroom, but they're not going to do a full second story. It's going to be modest in comparison.
It's possible that they could do it, though. So where did we end up? Did we end up
I'm-
as
I'm
the-
okay either way. I'm just trying to understand what all this means, that's all.
Did we end up with that friendly amendment that there was a first floor to start with? Everything had to be one story?
I heard a yes from
Just-
Zed.
'cause-
That's acceptable to me, yes. So
Okay.
if you have a lot of under 6,000, you can only add an ADU if your existing house is one story.
And the ADU has to be one story.
It has to be detached, yeah.
And the ADU has to be one
Does it
story,
have to be
too.
detached?
Can be attached to.
Well, if you're going to attach it, it has to be above, right?
No, no, no.
Oh,
You can have it
it can be, okay.
your garage.
Okay, no, then it can be, yeah,
attached to
yeah, it could be ground
be
attached,
attached or detached.
correct. But your ADU must be on the first floor.
And the existing house has to be
Yeah,
one story.
Yes,
So you agree with Commissioner Halloran's friendly amendment to that effect?
correct.
Did the second
Wait,
agree
wait,
to
wait,
this
wait,
friendly
wait,
amendment as well?
wait. You said the existing house has to be one story? That means people with two-story, with less than 6,000 lot are not allowed to have,
Correct.
Yes.
That is the motion that was made.
They would have to go through a variance process.
even if they meet the, even if the total is less than 40%?
Yes.
Yes.
You have a two-story house, you want to do an ADU, you're not going to be allowed.
Unless you're more than 6,000 square feet.
Or 6,000 or more.
What if you have a two-story house with less than 6,000 square foot and you want to convert the garage? That's not going to work in, that's not gonna-
That is
you're
not
gonna-
allowed by the proposed ordinance.
But you could go through a variance process.
Yes, with again, the recognition that variance findings are hard to make.
But I don't understand. Not anymore,
Have to be
not anymore
covered.
with the new
They don't have to
ordinance.
be covered.
So I struggle to find the reasoning behind that because I don't think that's going to be an equitable situation. Why should someone be punished because you have a two-story house? But why can't you convert your garage? I struggle with that. I think
Again, I could go either way.
I think
I
the
could go
more
with,
reasonable requirement is that the ADU has to be on the first floor. That makes sense to me.
That's what we're saying.
No, that's
well,
not what
you're
we're
that-
saying.
You're saying that you have to start with a single story. But she doesn't want to do that. She wants to say you can start with a two-story.
As long as,
Stories allowed as long as the ADU is on the first floor.
and the FAR is
FAR is
than
less than
point-
40%.
less than 0.4.
That, to me, makes more sense, but
But that's not the motion.
Correct.
it's not the motion. Yes, that's correct.
Are you okay with amending it then?
That is the motion.
So I'm going to withdraw my proposal because I actually prefer Yuki's amendment over Mike's, so I'm withdrawing my proposal.
So what's the motion on the floor right now?
I can reissue it if you want.
Please.
Okay, are we starting from scratch?
My preference would certainly be that you start from scratch. If the maker of the motion is withdrawing it,
Yes.
it'd be easier to just start with a new motion.
Would you like me to start with one? Okay.
Start with a new motion, please.
I'll read it again. The Planning Commission recommends that City Council amend Chapters 18.06 definitions, 18.10 regulations for R1, 8L, single-family larger lot area zoning, and 18.12 regulations for R1, 6L, single-family zoning districts of Title 18 zoning, and Chapter 17.15 property developments of Title 17, development of the Code of the City of Santa Clara, California, related to accessory dwelling units. With the recommendation that staff has made with these following conditions or recommendations. First, that the accessory dwelling unit have no more than 2 bedrooms. Second, that all the conditions apply for lots that are larger than 6,000. In the case of lots less than 6,000. 6,000 or less. 6,000 or less. That the accessory dwelling unit be only on the first floor, and that the combined FAR and lot coverage not exceed 0.4.
I second the motion.
I think you should say less than 6,000, not equal to, because equal to is different category, less than 6,000.
Okay.
What they-
Prior motion you made a while ago was lot size of 6,000 and greater, and
But
then,
that's what I would prefer, 6,000 and greater, and then less than 6,000.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Do I get a second? Oh, you
Got
can
a second from Yuki. Commissioner Chahal would like to add a comment?
I have a question, on discussion. Do we know, close to Santa Clara University, do we have any statistics about the lot sizes in the half-a-mile radius of university? Any rough guess?
Just because it's the old quad, lot sizes could be smaller because lots were subdivided prior to sort of current subdivision standards in the current Subdivision Map Act.
Okay. So now I'm coming back to the same issue of what we discussed earlier. The restriction of the 4th bedroom issue was brought because of that particular neighborhood. Is there a way, like, we can protect that neighborhood? Because if the lot sizes over there are all smaller sizes, and the issue we are facing right now is whatever, I agree with the Commissioner Surge, it's more of a behavioral issue and than anything else for that matter. But how can we take care of that issue for the existing neighborhood? Because let's say there are houses right now which are single-family small houses, and there are multiple students living in them, and which are a nuisance value for the neighborhood due to one reason or the other. And if we add this thing over there, another dwelling unit, how can we safeguard that neighborhood? I know this question would be for the council to revise, revisit the fourth bedroom issue and come up with a permanent solution on that. But is there any guesses how we can safeguard the neighborhood from that point of view?
Well, I believe that the two-bedroom limit will protect the neighborhood to some degree, but if we're concerned about even smaller, proliferation of bedroom in small lots, then we can restrict the bedrooms to, if it's a 6,000 foot or less, and, only one bedroom allowed. I mean, we could add another constraint.
So we cannot restrict 1,200 less than, we cannot restrict that, but we can restrict the bedroom.
Yes.
So if we say under 6,000, only one bedroom, just to take care of part of that situation, basically,
That's legal.
that's legal, right? If it is under 6,000, only one bedroom. If above 6,000, no problem.
Or two bedrooms.
Two bedrooms, yeah, sorry.
Do you want to add a friendly amendment?
I accept.
Thank you.
Does Commissioner Casey accept?
Yeah, I second the friendly amendment.
Okay.
Just clarification on this last one, did we also say it still had to have the FAR of 40%?
Yes.
That under 6,000, it's no more than one bedroom.
The rest of the motion remains unchanged.
Edu.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4, 5.
Okay. Nays?
Oppose.
Okay, one opposed. Okay. Next item on the calendar. Or agenda, excuse me. Hearings.
So did we do, oh, yeah, sorry. Okay.
It's, again, a citywide proposal. It's a request for the fiscal year 2017, 2018 capital improvement program. That the Planning Commission approves that it has conformed to the general plan.
Thank you. This is a continuation of the previous public hearing for the capital improvements budget for 2017-2018. You've received the attachments showing the new line items for the capital improvement budgets along with the CEQA determinations. The main thing that the Planning Commission wanted was for the actual draft budget to be issued so that they could have a look at the dollar figures involved for the particular line items. That was made available on May 4th, and we can have a discussion based on that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Jane?
Before I even turned on my light. All right. So I've been attending some of these budget meetings, and it seems like partly due to unfunded liabilities, the city is looking to be in fairly serious, dire financial future. And like, for example, one of the meetings that I attended said that just to maintain our pavement index, we would require $7.2 million just to maintain our pavement index. But the budget is only providing $4 million to maintain our street surfaces. So I see all of these proposals here, but it seems like there's going to be a lot of budget cutting. And so my question is to staff, I don't even know if these things are going to go through. A lot of these things that are in the enterprise zones will actually happen. But, or the enterprise departments like the utilities. But, so I see that those are going to happen, but I find it hard to believe that we are being asked to find out if the automated material check-in and sorting machine at the library meets budget environmental determinations.
Yeah, and from the simple environmental determination, yeah, it's something that could be considered, part of, an upgrade to existing facilities, CEQA guidelines, section 15301. So that's relatively straightforward. Whether it's consistent with the general plan or not, in our analysis, if you're looking at the major strategies and thinking about it in terms of, does this help improve city services per the major strategies? Yeah, we would agree with that thought.
I agree with that, but my problem is that, if all we're being asked is, do all of these items in some way meet the general plan environmentally? I guess maybe I'd have to say yes, but I don't even know if a lot of these are all new projects, are going to happen, because we're really cutting the budget at this point. But the more important thing that I see is that, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is more to raise the issue among council, that if I look at the traffic mitigation, what I see is that in prior years, we spent for traffic, I'm sorry, I am missing, okay, this is project ID 2670. I am really confused. Okay, let me get the right page. Project ID 1468, Annual Street Maintenance and Rehabilitation Program. We have residents that continually complain about the quality of our street surfaces. And here I see that in prior years, we have spent $6.2 million per year. In the next 5 years, we're only going to spend 1.6 million. So we're going to spend 1.1 million. So we're going to spend 1/5 the amount for street maintenance as we have in prior years. So I'm trying to figure out sort of the priorities and how all of these things fit in to the general plan. Then I also see that for pedestrian and bicycle enhancement, prior years, apparently we spent 400,000. Now we've only budgeted 200,000 for pedestrian and bicycle enhancement. So, I mean, I guess I almost feel like I have no choice but to approve this recommendation that we've gotten from staff. But I want to just raise awareness of the fact that the city is now facing some pretty dire financial situations, partly due to unfunded pension liability, where last night I heard that, like currently, I think the city provides like 15% of salary to the CalPERS, but 3 or 4 years down the road, we're going to have to provide 50% of salaries to CalPERS just to fund the pension liability. And for public safety, we're going to have to provide 75% of their salaries every year to just fund CalPERS. So the city.
So what you're saying is that, let's say we pay $1 for a police officer. In addition to that dollar, we have to pay 70 cents to CalPER?
In
Is that what
4
you're
years
saying?
from now, yes.
Wow.
So that's how dire the situation is right now with unfunded liabilities. And so my concern is that, we have a lot of, we have to be very careful about how we decide to spend this budget, because we're really not in good shape.
Well, and just with things like pavement maintenance, not being an expert in this at all, it might be worth a question at a future study session to see if there's a different approach from the Public Works Department, whether they're relying more on grant funding or Measure B in the future for things like pavement maintenance, because that was a recent victory at the ballot.
Yeah, that was in this budget, is we're getting a fair amount from Measure B, but it's still not sufficient to cover the 7.2 million that we require to maintain the pavement index. And, I think we used to be at like 83%, now we're down to like 72% of PCI. And so our roads have significantly degraded, and we'd have to even fund more than 7.2 million to get back to 80% or 83%. So, the data here is not really anything I can, what we've been presented here, I guess I can't say does not meet the general plan, but I just don't see that the priorities are being demonstrated in what we've been given. So, so I will have to vote for it, just mostly because it's something that certainly most of them are exempt under CEQA anyway, so I don't have anything to say about it, so.
Well, again, there are the sort of twin things that the Planning Commission is charged with, finding general plan consistency and the CEQA determinations.
Right. My biggest problem is that we have had, the other thing that I've noticed is that we have been building up this traffic mitigation carry forward, and I don't have any sense of where that money is being spent. It's like $11 million on traffic mitigation that's been collecting, and our traffic is horrible. Why are we not spending it on traffic mitigation? So,
So I put up I think the appropriate page from the budget, which talks about where the carry forward is in all the different funds for traffic mitigation. I think as I understand it, they're saving up money for eventual improvements that haven't been completely funded yet. So that page, looks like 3-3, lists out all the carry forward balances for the ongoing projects.
right, it seems to me, though, that we should, rather than just wait for all of these to get funded, we should rejuggle them and get some things done. I don't know. That's council priority, but that
Yeah,
would be
and-
kind of
and-
my recommendation that, in fact, I would like to approve this with the recommendation that we start spending some traffic mitigation funds that have been collecting.
I could second that. Commission,
But do we have other discussion?
that's what I was going to get to. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what we're asking for. My understanding is no, that, council will decide the budget or not, and that we're asking, are these conforming to the general plan?
That's correct.
Okay. And some of it, I could have done more research on it, but some that stood out is, so we have in the general plan that we're going to design and relocate the building maintenance shop.
Not that the building maintenance shop is going to be relocated, but just that kind of an action is consistent with the general plan, and that the city is trying to continue to provide high-quality services.
That's a pretty general statement. I just think that's a real general statement that you're asking to do. It is saying, are these things helpful to the city? And I got to believe they are in total, but whether they are in the general plan or not, now, am I being asked, are these items in the general plan? I would say, no, it's not.
Right, and to the extent there would be new capital improvements items like a substation that the city hadn't anticipated that might have growth-inducing impacts, yeah, that would be something to flag as this is not consistent with the general plan and needs reanalysis. But in the sense that there's something like, rebuilding the maintenance shop, that's something that, yeah, wouldn't rise to the level of new growth-inducing impacts, and we'd have to look at that sort of more general level. Is this providing good services to the city residents?
Okay, which is a pretty broad statement, yeah. So it's in terms of conforming it. I did have a couple of questions, two types of questions. One is, are some of these items actually capital improvement numbers? Some of them look kind of, I wouldn't call them capital improvement when we're designing construction of preventative maintenance. Some of those things, are they actually capital improvement items? When we're, let's say,
As I understand it, for this year's budget, they're all listed as capital improvement items, but from a sort of planning division perspective, we've been sort of at least advised that we should start moving things like our plans out of the capital improvements budget and into the operating budget.
yeah, some of these seem more like operating budget issues to me. Traffic calming study, I don't know if I'd call that a capital improvement program. The other more specific question is, I just questioned or wonder about what the fiber optic systems are. And in fact, I thought maybe that technology had gone away, but so these are within the general plan to put fiber optics into the sewer and water system performance?
Again, this is on the more general level of just improving city services, but the city has been, as I understand it, installing fiber optics, especially in relation to controlling a lot of the utility system. So interesting sort of intersection of service delivery and technology.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thanks.
Commissioner Chahal.
So I concur with what Commissioner Surd said on there. I think from point of view moving forward to council is okay, but from a point of view of a resident as a commissioner, I think we are not prioritizing. I wish we can prioritize some of these things. Like if you look at this screen over there, we only appropriated around 2 million out of the 13 million available. And we know right now that traffic is one of the biggest issue in the city. Like traffic signal enhancement, nothing, we are not doing anything on that. I wish we put more emphasis on what are the issues we being faced by the city residents today. And that's how, that would have been much better so that everybody gets a good picture where our money is being spent versus, oh, we have appropriation available, but we don't know where to spend it. Versus, oh, these are the 1, 2, 3 top priorities. Traffic is the number one, how we can improve, like signal enhancement, automatic signal enhancement, making them more intelligent. Those are the things we can probably incorporate and put a priority on those things so that we can improve the quality of life of our residents. And this seems to be a half-cooked sort of budget report, and I don't know what improvements will that be on top of that, but those are my comments on that. As regards the fiber optics, I think Commissioner O'Halloran, the city provides fiber optics infrastructure to all the data centers.
Yeah, I'm not technically.
No, I'm just telling you, the city provides that fiber optic infrastructure to most of the data centers, so they give that service to all these data centers. So that's pretty important for the business, data center business we have in the city.
Everything was going wireless.
Yeah, no. The data centers are still connected to fiber and other stuff. So we provide that service. City provides.
Pull back on that stuff. Yeah.
Right, that's for the household basically, smaller chunk of providing that wireless connectivity because they bought some company which has a much better technology to provide this wirelessly versus laying down the new fiber itself. Okay, so those are my.
Thing we can be doing, following what you're saying, is making a priority.
Right, yeah, those are important. Like down the line, it will be much better that the residents see some of the top priority. These are the top priority dollars we are being spent. These are the top priority issues residents are facing. And these are the, out of 13 million or whatever the amount, see, we are spending 50-60% to solve the current issues. Like postponing these, as Commissioner Surt said, we are collecting all those traffic mitigation fees, and we are not using them when we have to use them today, is detrimental to the quality of life of our residents, and that has to be improved on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I make a motion that to adopt a resolution making findings on the conformity of the fiscal year 2017 to 2018 capital improvement program budget with the 2010-2035 general plan.
I would like to make an amendment. I would like to recommend to council, considering that on page 16 of the capital budget document, that there's a carry forward of $10.8 million for traffic mitigation in Fund 525, and that we're spending only $2.64 million in 2017, that we try to accelerate our traffic mitigation to use more of the carry forward funds.
I accept the amendment.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay. Public presentation?
Yep. Is there any member of the public that would like to give us a presentation? I don't see any. Reports of commissions, board, and liaison and committees. Announcements and other items.
I would like to make an announcement.
Okay, let's hear it.
So next week, I don't know how many of you are members of SPUR. Are you guys familiar with SPUR? It's an organization that looks at issues. They have all kinds of lectures that they do. So next Thursday, June 1st, SPUR is having a party at San Pedro Square Market. So if anyone wants to attend, I plan to attend. But it's a great event to meet a lot of people in the planning field. So
If you can send us the date and location, that'd be great. Any other announcements?
Should we cover the National Planning Commission
Yeah,
over here?
you can go first.
Okay. So me and Commissioner Kelly, we attended the NPA New York. And I'll just highlight some of the major issues being discussed or being touched as such. And there's so many sessions, you can't attend all of them. Basically, you can only attend a few of them. So some of the major ones are not in a particular priority order, like community garden is a big thing, food security, organic, and a lot of cities are working on these things, to an extent, they are asking their local grocery stores to give some vouchers or something if they promote the local food security. So that was a big thing. All these, they get some variances if you do provide local food or other stuff, and some tax benefits including that. So farmer markets and other stuff, they're pretty big on that. Okay, coming back to the issues we are facing, basically the high density and changing scenario, other stuff. So a lot of cities are facing the same issues, basically. It's not that we are the only ones facing on that. But among the discussion among the planning commissioners, something came up pretty loud and clear, that our zoning ordinance and general plan should sort of be hand in hand. And that's very, very important. And we should put a top priority on making these two hand in hand. If we don't, and a lot of expert commissioners and expert people did mention, it's not a good idea to change general plan on the dais by the planning commissioners or by the council. That's a very, very bad idea. And community involvement, engagement was a pretty big topic, because things will change, but unless we plan really well from general plan point of view, our zoning map, zoning ordinance point of view, and involve the community, things can go really bad. And that was some of the other stuff. Placemaking, yeah, I agree. We are doing some seminars over here, so that's another one. A lot of cities are doing those placemaking things. What else? Oh, I took a tour to a city called Stamford, Connecticut, and that's almost the same size of a city as ours as far as population is concerned. I think they are around 125,000. And they lost a lot of jobs during the downturn, financial downturn. Like UBS had their biggest headquarter over there, and the biggest stock exchange floor was on that building, and that building is empty right now. But they have been very proactive to bring the businesses back, and they have been very successful in doing that. It was very eye-opening tour, and they have a special downtown committee, and they have a very good downtown. But on top of that, they have a very active downtown committee which propose and which has make amendments to what is going on and all that stuff. So I think some of the things we learned is, instead of waiting for things to happen, if we plan and stride while things are going on, while changes are going on, that's much better than to do some big stuff later on than not doing small chunks in the process. So I think otherwise the conference was good. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay. A couple of things that I thought were interesting. I went to a couple on affordable housing, and I guess it doesn't matter what part of the country you're from. The term affordable housing is now like what people are concerned about. Are you going to have increased crime, transients? But there were some very interesting success stories where you had areas that were very affluent, and you had 4 to 6-story structures next to like jogging and bike paths that really did fit in and were very nice examples of what can be done when it's properly planned out. Regarding broadband, I took one lecture on broadband that was very interesting. It talked about the need of broadband's only going to increase as we have self-driving cars and shuttles and flying cars. And as funny as that sounds, they showed several flying prototypes of cars that could be in our neighborhood in just a matter of 10, 15 years. So I thought that was very interesting. The other thing about broadband was that several communities, rather than wiring the whole area, would wire key sites. They used high buildings as a main site, and then they would put repeaters on other locations to increase the range of the broadband. And if we do have self-driving shuttles along the El Camino or Stevens Creek, that's one way of not having to put all the infrastructure in, but just putting it at key sites and then just putting repeaters. Now, regarding self-driving cars, they're talking about parking. The big thing is they're saying rather than having parking structures that can be converted, more likely developers are going to want structures they can put up relatively inexpensive and knock down in 10 or 15 years, because if our need for parking goes down because of self-driving cars, we can reconfigure the space and reduce the amount of parking if we find the need goes down. Other thing about self-driving cars is it frees up police time, police that are writing tickets. It reduces the cost for insurance. Roadway pricing, which I didn't quite understand, but they were talking about, areas that are heavily impacted. In certain areas that having self-driving cars, you may be paying a fee, but you're going to be using an app and you will just become accustomed to it. And then I did one seminar on bicycles, which they're talking about focal points in a layout for bicycle pedestrian situations. They found that if they can deal with 5 to, I think it was 7% of the most dangerous intersections, they could dramatically increase bicycle ridership. So it's places that make you feel uncomfortable would most likely make the average person riding a bike feel uncomfortable. And they talked about addressing those spots. So on a map, I think they had four color designations, and they focused on making sure that you can connect in a geographic area in the worst areas, and typically they did it by separation between traffic, so there would be like a buffer, a median barrier to relieve the perceived risk to the cyclist. And that was it. I got a lot out of it. I loved the tour of New York. It's amazing on how efficient it is. I actually did, besides taxis, I did take multiple trips on the subway and found it a very easy way to get around. That's it for me.
Can I ask a question? Did you guys get a tour of Hudson Yards?
Pretty close to Hudson Yard, but no, a lot of the Hudson Yard is being built right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure only probably one building they started using. All other buildings are under construction on that.
Because that's a big related project. It's
Right.
bigger than ours. Yeah.
Yeah, the multiple of those, but
Yeah.
most of that is under construction.
Yeah. I took a cruise by boat, and, I was able to see that project along with a variety of projects from the boat, and it's pretty amazing on everything that's going on. There was a new housing development, which I think they said was 16 towers, and, I think we're talking 50, 60 floors. I mean, it was pretty amazing on how they can get so many people in such a small geographic area. But I loved it. I walked around the streets, and I loved the pizza. I mean, pizza here, it's not like freshly made in front of you. I mean, it's like you could just taste that it was freshly made. And I thought, considering it was a very high-density area, the fact that they had so much freshly prepared food was great. Okay, Architectural Committee.
Yes, I actually have a request. Our next meeting is on June 7th, and I'd like to see if I could get coverage. I have a potential conflict on that day. It's Wednesday.
Okay. The calendar.
people could get back to me later on that, that's fine.
And on that note, I am
But
traveling.
I came first. Huh?
On that note, I'm traveling from June 8th to June 24th, so I'll be missing probably we have meetings during that time, so I'll be missing the meetings on those dates.
I think I'm free, so you'll just need to get one other person.
Well, you're still free on the 7th, right?
7th time.
Yeah, he's still there on the 7th.
on 8th.
So just mine. You got it covered.
And I'll be missing the June 14th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, and I'm going to be missing the one at the end of the month,
This one or next one? June.
end of June. So basically, you guys can vote for the replacement chair because my term is up at the end of June. Or we could do it in the middle of the June meeting when I'll still be here. But Yuki would like to be chair?
I do.
Okay, and Raj, vice chair? Okay, and Raj wants to be,
Why don't we just do that when it's,
yeah, no, I'm just saying, just so people know, because there are going to be several people. Raj, vice chair, and then we'll just need somebody that wants to be secretary. Okay,
And just a reminder, you're not allowed to make that decision tonight.
I understand. Do we have to make it at the end of June?
it's
Or-
on the agenda.
No, you can postpone it to the first meeting in July, if not enough of you are going to be
Okay.
here. Because it's not agendized,
It's not agen-
it's
So-
absolutely has to be agendized.
Does everybody want it to be at the end of June that we vote for positions, or beginning of June?
I think the end of June would be appropriate. Yeah. That's, your term is,
My term will be up. I won't be here at the last meeting, though.
There's a meeting on June 28th. 28th.
we won't nominate.
And then Raj won't be here.
28th out. I will miss the June 14th.
Okay, so I'll miss the 28th. So that's fine.
That's fine.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all those in favor? Aye.
What now?
I saw it on the news about the pension liability. He said in 3 years or 4 years that they have to dramatically increase.
Yeah, our contribution.
Steve, are you terming out as a commissioner or just,
No, as chair.
just as chair?
Oh, as a chair only.
As chair.
We're not letting him off that easy.
All good.
Is it a situation?